This video will provide a walkthrough to install the NAI Opensource AutoGPT GUI as a standalone install on a private server. We will use Google GCP for this build, but it can be installed on any cloud or local server. First, we need to have the Neuronic AI GitHub repo up, as we will need to refer to it several times. You are likely viewing this video from the NAI AutoGPT UI/GUI GitHub repo or from YouTube, where we also link to the GitHub repo. We also provide a video that shows users how to use the interface on this GitHub repo as well. This is a GUI built on top of the AutoGPT open-source framework, published by Significant Gravitas. Now, since we are building a brand new server for this, we will need to install Docker, since this is a containerized implementation. We provide guidance for installing Docker in a file called howtodocker.txt. Before we can install Docker, we need a server to install it on, so I am going to create a temp server on Google GCP for this, but you can install this anywhere, including your own local machine. I am going to create a new instance using the default E2 2-core 4 GB RAM instance, and I am going to load an Ubuntu server image. 20 GB of disk space should be more than enough. Also, I need to make sure that I configure this to have an external IP so that I can get to it from the internet. Now that I have the server built, I just need to wait for it to come online. Okay, now that the server is online, I am going to SSH to it. Now that I am on the server, I am going to just run each set of commands out of the Docker how-to-text file until I have completed the Docker and Docker Compose install. Once the Docker install is complete, we can see that Docker Compose is installed and runs, and we can see we have Docker installed by running Docker version. Now we are ready to clone, configure, and install the NAI AutoGPT GUI open-source interface. First thing we need to do is clone the repo locally. If you have a recent version of Ubuntu, then Git already comes standard. If git commands do not work for you, you will need to install Git first. Then we can run git clone and the HTTPS repo address that we copy from the repo to copy the code down to our machine. We can check the directory to make sure we have it here in the AutoGPT UI folder. Now that we have the build here, we just need to create and update our 4.env files. We also have a file called envguidance.txt that should help you configure yours. I do make a couple of mistakes in this part of the video, including putting the wrong MySQL address and forgetting to unrem my OpenAI key. We have updated the guidance to ensure you are configuring MySQL right if you copy and paste the MySQL URL from the guidance. Don't forget to update it with your root password as you configure in your mysql.env file. Also, for more secure installation, we recommend you connect to the MySQL database and create a dedicated account for this database install, and then update your build to use those credentials instead of using the root account. I am going to use the link in the guidance to create an OpenAI API key and update it here. Don't bother trying to copy my key. I have already deleted it before I completed making this video. I have also already deleted this Google instance. These were temp resources for the purpose of user training. Also, I am just going to clean this env file up a little and wrap up the last couple of env files, and now I should be ready to build the app. Okay, now that all my env files are created, it looks like all that's left is to run the sudo make all command to build the app. Oh, looks like I forgot to install build essential package. I need to install that if I want to be able to run the make command. Using apt install build essential to achieve this. Okay, now that I have installed build essential, I can run the make all command, and bam. Now we are building the app. It's actually a bit to build since we are building AutoGPT in the GUI and we only have a shared server with 2 cores and 4 GB of RAM. So I am just going to fast forward to this up to the point the build has completed. Okay, now that the install is complete, I am just going to run docker ps-a to make sure all my containers appear to be up. Spoiler alert, mine were down due to issues with MySQL on the host machine, so I had to configure the connection directly to the container MySQL instead of localhost, but after that all my containers came up just fine. You shouldn't have any issues if you use the provided guidance. Notice we are listening on 8160, and we can confirm that with netstat if you have NetTools installed. But for Google anyway, we will need to make a firewall rule for this, or I won't be able to connect to it. You of course don't need to bother with firewall configs if you are running everything locally or don't have your server behind a firewall. So I will just copy the server's IP address to clipboard, and I actually already made a temporary firewall rule I wanted to show you. It allows 8160 along with other things. Normally you would not make this wide open like this. I used this rule temporarily just for demonstration purposes. So now I see when I browse to this IP and port, we now have access to the graphical interface. I am just going to upload a quick Hello World test now. I will configure this also to use GPT 3.5 with 4K tokens for both fast and smart engines. And here is how I figured out that I had accidentally left my API key remmed out, so I am just going back and updating my API key to remove the # from in front of it and run the make all command again to push the update to my containers. Checking that my containers are still good, and now let's try this again. After I upload the file and click start, it will think about the instructions and then ask for authorization to start working the instruction set. I will agree and let it do the next 5 commands without asking for permission again. And now I can see that it has finished the job and there is in fact a hello.txt file with the words hello world and today's date. This concludes the tutorial on installing NAI's open source AutoGPT GUI interface from scratch.